What's up guys, TechLab here. Now before we spend any kind of significant amount of money upgrading our little £30 FX powered gaming PC, I wanted to find out what good was it actually in its current state? What was it actually useful for? And unfortunately, my original ideas didn't really pan out so well, so we will need to spend something on it. But today I wanted to find out what was the minimum B that we'd need to spend on this system to actually make it useful. Now, for those of you that are catching up on the video series here, this is a PC that I recently purchased. It only cost me £30. It was a non-working FX powered gaming PC, and we managed to get it working for no cost at all. There was just a simple broken connector inside the system, which was stopping it from booting, but we fixed that, no issues, and everything seemed to work perfectly fine. In our last video, we actually did a bit of performance testing on this machine, and from that video, I thought that I'd actually found the perfect spot for where this system kind of lies. That would have been an ultimate Xbox 360 alternative for those of you out there that want to play some retro games from what was probably one of the best generations of gaming ever made. On paper, this system is cheaper than an Xbox 360 if you were to go purchase one today from somewhere like CEX. And it's also much faster when it comes to the hardware. It actually sits between the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One. But unfortunately, this doesn't actually translate very well when it comes to PC versions of those games. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first, PC gamers want to actually play in something higher than 720p. And of course, going to 1080p means there is a much higher demand on the system. And secondly, most of the games that were Xbox 360 era games that eventually came to PC have either been remastered, advanced, or enhanced, or their settings just allow for a lot better quality pictures. So unfortunately, when you do actually start playing PC versions of those games on there, the results are very mixed. For example, if you are playing some of the earlier titles from the Xbox 360 era, such as Tomb Raider, Legends, this system works perfectly fine. Those are games that are roughly released around 2005 to 2006, and you will get a high FPS experience out of them, even in 1080p with a high setting. But when you start looking at games from the later side of the generation, things like Dead Island 1, unfortunately the system starts to fall flat on its face. Even running the game in something like 1080p with a low preset, you're gonna barely scratch the 30 FPS kind of average target, and it's gonna be a stutter fest throughout. So as it is, this system won't provide a consistent performance across all of those types of titles, which actually leads to a very bad gaming experience. What will it actually take in the minimal spending possible to get this system up to spec and really becoming the ultimate alternative to the Xbox 360? Well, we need to obviously change a part. Now, a lot of you out there have commented on different things that we can change on the system. Of course, changing the hard drive to an SSD will speed up most processes. Generally, operating system kind of stuff will actually be much faster, but unfortunately that's not going to really change the performance of games that much. The CPU, of course, will give us a little bit of a boost in things, but again, it's not really going to provide that much more in terms of gaming performance. And as well as the RAM being a single stick of 8GB of DDR3, doubling that up into dual channel could make a bit of a difference. But unfortunately, the actual bottleneck in this system is the graphics card itself. So we will need to change that. And I think I've got an answer to that. Hitting CEX and finding the cheapest thing that I can, I managed to find one of these. This is the AMD Radeon R9 270. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. It is from the same generation as the R7 250 that we've currently got in this system, but this card is in a league of its own, particularly even on that same generation. In fact, we have double the VRAM in this card, a whopping 2GB, which is double what the R7 250 has, and it's 1GB. But it also offers over 200% improvement in performance over this card as well. So hopefully that little bit extra will give us the boost we need to be able to boost those games into something that is way more playable. The only way that we're going to find out though, of course, is by installing this graphics card and giving the system a test. Okay, so we've got the graphics card installed and everything is working perfectly fine. We've got into Windows. It's a little bit funny when it comes to drivers because unfortunately the latest official drivers from AMD just simply do not work on this graphics card. You have to go find some real random thing deep inside of all of their release notes to actually get it working. What I will do is I'll probably put a link or something in the description below for anybody out there that is looking for an R9 270. That's how you're going to actually get this working. Unless you use things like modded drivers, they tend to work perfectly fine, but we're using the official ones from AMD that we could actually get working. Replacing the old graphics card actually made the system look a lot better. This is the R7 250 from before. It's a very basic graphics card really. It's got some old ports on it and a very basic fan, but I suppose in its day it would have done the job. The new graphics card looks much better in the system. Unfortunately, our system with the VS450 power supply did come with a 6-pin connection, which is great. great because it really means that we can upgrade this system. If we didn't have that connection there, we'd be extremely limited on what we could actually put inside this system, because graphics cards that are more powerful than things like the R7 250 tend to be a lot more expensive when you don't require any additional power. You're talking about graphics cards like the 1050 Ti, the 1650, that kind of stuff. Probably way too powerful for what this system is at the moment, and would cost a lot more too. We only paid £15 for this little R9 270, and like I say, it should offer us over 200% more performance than the previous card. But of course, we're going to be testing that now. One of the games that I did test was Dead Island. Now, this is a great example of a game that you would have played way back on the Xbox 360, and it was a fantastic. I love the game. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But the PC version of it is the definitive edition. They made a lot of enhancements on it. They made it look better, they made it run better, and unfortunately that does come at a punch to the system. It's much more demanding. So again, it makes a great example of something that would have played perfectly fine back then in the original version at 720p, maybe 25 frames per second. But in our testing, even at a 1080p low setting with the definitive edition, you could nearly achieve a 30 FPS performance average, but the 1% lows were dipping around between the 18 and 20 mark, which meant the game was very stuttery. So in my opinion, it was completely unplayable. But we're going to test it again now with the new graphics card that didn't cost a lot, and really see, does it make that much of a difference? So let's click play on the game and we'll launch into it. Unfortunately, because we haven't changed anything else in this system, it is still extremely slow to load things, a combination of between that single stick of RAM and the old-fashioned spinning rust hard drive. So we're going to have to wait a few minutes, but once it gets into game, we'll configure it up and we'll see what kind of performance we get. Before we dive straight into the game, what we'll do is we'll go to the options and configure our display and graphics. The reason that we have to do this outside the game is because it doesn't actually let you change much once you're inside the game, or I don't believe that it does. So the one thing that we'll do is we will set the game to best performance. This is its low setting effectively, which is low preset. That's what we tested it on before. We'll see what kind of performance we get with that. The game, of course, does look much better than the original Xbox 360 version would do, because we're in a higher resolution, and PC games generally just do. So we'll hit start and continue this. It actually loads reasonably quick into the game, so we didn't have any issues there at all. A little bit phasey and blurry, but that's actually the styling of the game. And so far, the performance is looking actually pretty okay. We're currently getting an average of 66 frames per second with a 1% low of 30. It means the game is much more smoother, everything looks much better, but we will go and try and run to get some kind of action to see what kind of dips we really get on that performance. Again, there are a lot of blurriness and weird effects on this game. They're things that you can generally turn off. Maybe we'll do a custom configuration at some point, but so far I think this is actually looking really good. The game is more than playable. We're now getting over 100 frames per second on our continuous, with an average of 82 and a 1% low of 47. Definitely higher and faster and better than the Xbox 360 version. So I think this graphics card actually really made a big difference. We'll go back over to the settings and see if we can actually change anything. So no, unfortunately, they do lock most of the settings here, particularly when you're in game. So we're going to have to exit the game, and what we'll do is we'll increase the settings a little bit, maybe do a little bit of fine tuning and tweaking on them to things that I like, just to see what kind of experience we can really get out of it. Now that we're back in the options menu, we do have 2 GB of VRAM now, so maybe we'll just do a bit of a custom setting here. We'll leave the game in 1080p resolution. We're going to increase the texture quality to a high. Maybe our 2 GB of VRAM can handle that. We're going to leave full screen on. The shadow map size, not 100% sure what that is, but we'll turn it up to a medium. Foliage quality, we'll turn that up to a medium. We're going to leave vertical sync off. View distance, we're going to turn that up a little bit. Maybe we'll go about third way up the bar. I'm not again sure what this is actually going to cause. We're going to leave ambient occlusion off. I'm going to leave motion blur off, but we are going to turn on a little bit of anti-aliasing, just because I just want it to clear up a little bit, and hopefully we've got the power to do that now. Film grain effect, I'm going to turn that off because I don't personally like it. And the chromatic aberration effect, I'm going to turn that off as well. So again, I'm not 100% sure what some of those settings do, but hopefully it will clear the picture up a little bit. This game, its artistic styling was always a little bit fuzzy and blurry, particularly when you run out of stamina in the game, everything goes blurry, which is quite annoying, but hopefully we can get rid of some of that anyway. But let's jump back into the game. Performance is a little bit lower than it was before, but that's okay. We had a little bit of room to play with, and hopefully the game looks much clearer. I'm actually quite pleased and happy with the performance now and the visual effects in this game. Things are looking a bit smoother, they're looking a bit sharper. We've got rid of that god-awful grainy film across the top of the screen, as well as some of the motion blur effects, which can be really annoying. Even when moving the character, things are much smoother now. They're much clearer. So let's go find something on the beach. The beach is always a good area to run around in. If you do look out to the ocean, your performance will go up, as you can see, but we're currently getting an average of 76 frames per second with a 1% low of 58. So the performance actually increased quite a bit on our 1% lows, which is making the game much smoother. Now, during our testing of Xbox 360 era games on the original system, Dead Island was probably one of the worst performing, and the reason for that is because it is the definitive edition. It is much more enhanced, and we are trying to go up in resolution, and we're trying to increase the graphics preset. But with our new graphics card upgrade, which actually makes the system still cheaper than going and buying an Xbox 360 from somewhere like CEX, the game actually plays beautifully fine. But does that apply to lots of other Xbox 360 games out there? Well, let's take a look. So as you can see from those benchmarks, our little system will have absolutely no issue playing pretty much any Xbox 360 era game now. A lot of them games you could get a high FPS experience out of if you really wanted to by tweaking a few settings, but you are going to get a better picture quality, you're going to get better performance than purchasing an old Xbox 360. Although some of those games are actually capped on the PC to 60 FPS, it's an internal cap, you can't get higher than that, but who needs more than that when you've spent very little on a machine? The next thing that we're going to be doing to this system is giving it a complete overhaul though. It's time to really actually put some money into it. We're not going to be spending too much, we're still on a budget, but we're going to do some real work on this to see if we can get it to a modern standard. You won't want to miss that, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments below what you think of the system so far. Has it performed better than you would actually think with the original graphics card or even the new one? Overall, this system now with that graphics card, if you did that kind of upgrade, would have cost around £45, which is a fantastic price, even if it's just to play these types of older games. Hook this thing up next to your television, whack in a controller, and you could have a whale of a time. But anyway, I'm going to hit the online shops to see what I can get for this system next, and I'm sure as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.